Alright, welcome back to another video over here on SCS Combat, and today I'm going to be giving you my post-event thoughts on Misfits 22 that just went down today, 30th of August, and an unbelievable card it was. I will be giving you my thoughts and reaction to the main three fights, Dylan Dennis versus Warren Spencer in MMA. We'll get into that there, very interesting. Tony Ferguson versus Saul Pappy. Probably one of the happiest moments that I've had in my time of watching the sport. And Darren Till versus Luke Rockhold. Nasty finish there as well. We'll get into all of this and what I think is next for all the fighters. Starting off, Dylan Dennis got his redemption, sort of, Dylan Dennis is one of those people that isn't very liked in the scene, which is understandable. You see what had happened with the Logan Paul situation with his wife. Stuff like that there. It was obviously an interesting build up. You see KSI offering to double Dylan Dennis's pay if he knocks Warren Spencer out, and stuff like that there. I'll tell you right now, Dylan Dennis did not listen to that for a second. And to be fair to him, he actually did stand, and it was kind of like he jabbed Warren Spencer, and Warren Spencer looked like he wobbled a bit or like stumbled or something. And quite a stupid move. Warren Spencer shot in at the hips of Dylan Dennis, who choked him immediately with a guillotine, used the momentum, got top mount with a guillotine and choked him. Straight away, a 15-second win for Dylan Dennis as he picks up the Misfits MMA title, the first ever Misfits MMA title. I don't really know if they're going to go down that avenue a lot unless it is Dylan Dennis. But it could lead to some big fights. You've seen Eddie Hall in there after.
Okay, we have a deal. You're under 200 pounds. I'm on 70. I have the right to help you. How do you come back from that? You're under 200 pounds. We do it, but respect. Well, hey, that's my champion, you know?
Tony Ferguson, stuff like that. There's definitely huge potential in this Misfits MMA thing. They obviously think that there is as well, or else they wouldn't have given Dylan Dennis the opportunity to do it. So Dylan Dennis gets his redemption after all the hate he gets and stuff like that there, which could be warranted a lot of the time. Dylan Dennis gets his comeback, gets his get back as he submits Warren Spencer. But there's not a lot of people the Misfits can bring in really that would not get submitted by Dylan Dennis. So yeah, there's not much Warren Spencer was going to do there, and there was not much expected of him either. What's next for Dylan Dennis? Obviously we've seen in the ring after Eddie Hall, which will be very interesting to say the least. Eddie Hall was in that ring. Dylan Dennis and I'm going back and forth. But I think mainly the main opponent we want to see, and it was scheduled and set to happen before, Dylan Dennis versus Tony Ferguson, the next opponent, the next fight that we will get onto in a minute. But obviously since Tony Ferguson come out on top of the night and looked really good in there, I do think, this is a great fight, and it's someone that could give resistance to Dylan Dennis's jiu-jitsu, and it's the type of name that Dylan Dennis can build off as well, and it's a notable win, a notable name if he does get the win over Tony Ferguson. So I think that fight's the one to make next. It's also probably the biggest Misfits MMA fight you could make right now, unless you bring in someone like Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz, stuff like that. But I think you run Dylan Dennis versus Tony Ferguson next, and probably over in the States that one to be fair. Get a couple of things going there. I think there's going to be a card in the States in November, December time. So look, we'll see what happens there. But great win for the long and lasted. Great performance from Dylan Dennis. Moving on to our next fight. Now, you want to talk about Cinderella stories. You want to talk about rocky moments, comebacks. Tony Ferguson just achieved that tonight, and it's probably the happiest I've been in a while watching fights, watching boxing. But not a lot of times is your reaction to like shout of happiness. Tony Ferguson was one of those moments tonight. Obviously we weren't sure what to expect from Tony Ferguson. We all know, before I get into the breakdown of the fight, we all know what it's been like with Tony Ferguson. One of the most brutal, just savage UFC fighters there ever was. 12-fight win streak, interim title. Unfortunately never got the big fight with Conor and Khabib, and then fought Justin Gaethje, who put his fight win streak to an end, and started off one of the longest losing streaks we'd seen in the sport. Tony Ferguson then went on to get beat by names like Michael Chandler, obviously that insane knockout, Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, Paddy Pimblett, Bobby Green, Michael Chiesa. It got to a point where it was people that he definitely would have beat in his prime, but it just wasn't happening for Tony anymore, and we were kind of counting down the days until he got out of the UFC, and he did. And the first thing he did was go to boxing and took on Saul Pappy. Now, starting off in this fight, Saul Pappy was looking good, looking sharp. I think I gave him the first round. He was landing clean a lot on Tony's chin. It was quite concerning, to be honest. But Tony's showed a good chin in there tonight. Took a lot of hard shots from a hard hitter and barely even wobbled. Then in the second round, come out, and although he was taking more of the same shots, he was eating them still and was coming forward now under more pressure. The jab was landing way more on Sol Pappy, landing clean, and the pressure was kind of breaking through. And I give Tony Ferguson the second round, but you could easily give it to Sol Pappy as well. Maybe there was a bit of bias in that one. At the end of round 2, when they went to the corners, it showed Sol Pappy, and I thought this is interesting because he's clearly breathing quite heavy for the fact that round 2 has just ended. This isn't looking good for him. And right enough, went out in the third round, and although he's already a bit of a counter puncher, Sol Pappy's output dropped, his hands dropped to his waist, and Tony Ferguson put on the pressure, put up the pace even more. And you get flashbacks in there because that was insane. And at the middle of round 3, 30 seconds left to go in round 3, Tony Ferguson backs Sol Pappy up on the ropes and they're trading shots, but Tony Ferguson's landing the better shot. And then all of a sudden he gets Sol Pappy, just unloads a huge combination of like 10 punches on him. And unfortunately for Sol Pappy, he didn't respond. Although he was intelligently defending himself, no response, and there was a lot of unanswered shots. So the referee stopped it. The aftermath of this was one of the greatest things that I've ever witnessed in the sport, to be honest. Just seeing Tony Ferguson win again is, I mean, it's strange the way the sport works. You wouldn't really think, if you seen my reaction tonight and you were just some random that didn't watch the sport, you would think I'm insane. But sometimes these wins mean something, do you know what I mean? And honestly, you can't blame him. Tony Ferguson dropped to his knees in the middle of the ring in a moment of relief, in a moment of success again, finally getting a win in a fight. Tony Ferguson hasn't felt that in about 5-6 years. So it was it was unbelievable to see, wholesome moment, as they say. The screaming, you could just tell the relief that Tony Ferguson got from this win. And you can tell when he was unloading that last combination on Sol Pappy, he seen that the referee was close and he just went for it. And honestly, it was such a great moment. Tony Ferguson, what's next for him? In my opinion, like I said earlier on, probably that Dylan Dennis matchup in MMA right there for the Misfits MMA title.
Congrats on the win. Let's do it.
And you heard Tony this week in the press conference. He loves collecting trophies. He loves collecting medals. So I think that is the one to make. And maybe Tony can collect the Misfits MMA title as well. Be the king of Misfits. However, if that doesn't go down next, Tony did win the interim Misfits title, much like he had the interim UFC title. So the middleweight world champion in Misfits right now is Anisong Gibb. That'll be a tough fight for anyone. And it would be extremely interesting to see if Tony could break him with that pressure, because that's usually Gibbs' game plan. So it'll be a very interesting clash of styles, to be honest. It'll be a great fight. I'm up for that one as well. So Anisong Gibb or Dylan Dennis next in MMA for Tony Ferguson. I want to see Tony back in there. Such a great moment tonight for him. Sol Pappy, on the other hand, probably just build him back up again. I do think if the referee didn't stop it there, a lot of people are questioning the stoppage. I do think if the referee didn't stop it, that Tony Ferguson would have went on to knock him out anyways, stop him. You could see the pressure was really getting to Sol Pappy. He's a counter puncher, he's a defensive fighter, but he never usually lets himself get teed off on like that, and he did. So he's getting tired, and Tony was just getting started, so it's Tony time finally. Finally Tony time arrived. And move on to the main event of the evening as Luke Rockhold and Darren Till clashed in the main event in Misfits boxing match for the Misfits Bridgerweight world title. The Misfits Bridgerweight Pro World title, I believe. The belt's actually very nice. I'll see if I can get a photo of it. Alright, so a very intense build up into this fight, as we all seen at the press conferences. Darren Till was going absolutely ballistic. Every chance he got, trying to attack Luke Rockhold verbally, physically, mentally, everything. He was going for it. He was going for it in the press conferences. You kind of see Luke Rockhold, on the other hand, is more calm. Like, he wasn't trying to go ballistic and fight at any second, but still good build up from both sides, from both fighters. Intense build up. I think you knew going into this fight, it probably meant a lot for Darren Till. I don't know, I heard during the week Darren Till could have the extra thing of proving that he was good enough to beat these people. Starting off in round 1, it's good back and forth. Darren Till started off really good, landed a nice sharp left hand from that southpaw stance, and throughout the round Luke Rockhold kind of got into it more, and you were like, alright, we're getting somewhere here. Good fight. Then Luke Rockhold comes forward and Darren Till tags him with a 1-2. Luke Rockhold kind of gets pushed backwards a bit from it, and decides that he was not going to get pushed backwards again by it, and he needed to land his own punch, and he went in and got whacked with another left hand that knocked him down heavily. So that's a lesson for all. Don't let your ego take over in a fight. If you get stunned by a shot, don't immediately go back for the kill, because you'll probably get nailed, and he did. Dropped, heavy drop as well, but he got back up. The round ended, luckily for him, and we moved on to round two. Now, Darren Till didn't come out as crazy in round two. He took the measured, slow approach again. I think he just knew that he was going to land. It was inevitable. And clocked Luke Rockhold again with a heavy shot. And Luke Rockhold didn't get fully knocked down, but he near enough touched the ground. He was like a second, like his glove was like an inch from touching the ground. Round two, Luke Rockhold was already very close to getting knocked out. And then at round three, insane. A minute in, Darren Till's hurting Luke Rockhold, putting on the pressure even more, and he gets him into the corner, and he throws jab to the body, straight left, two hooks, and then a clean left hand, uppercut in there as well. And he just breaks the guard of Luke Rockhold and lands an absolute missile straight on the chin of Luke Rockhold, and it folds him, knocks him out cold, bad. Luke Rockhold one leg underneath and stuff like that there. It's stuff you don't want to see. Luckily, he got up, was alright, so shout out to Luke Rockhold, who was a true fighter, true warrior, and one of the best there's been. Strikeforce UFC world champion. There's no doubting how good of a fighter he is. Unfortunately, it wasn't going to go his way in there tonight. That knockout was nasty, man. That knockout was insane. Straight left again. Darren Till is very good at boxing right now against like anyone that's going to come over and it's their first time in boxing. If no matter how good of an MMA fighter they were, they're not going to beat Darren Till. In my opinion, I think he's just better, more used to it, and he's been fighting better people and sparring. Darren Till is in a very good gym. Liam Smith in there as well. So what's next for Darren Till? I suppose that gets us on to, and this got interesting. So he tweeted on Twitter there, or X as it's called, in a reply, and he said, anyone KSI, Masvidal, Tommy Fury, Jake Paul, do all the names like that there. But the main person that he called out tonight in the ring was Carl Froch. Now, if you're new to this and don't know Carl Froch, he was a brilliant fighter, multiple time world champion, fought in the era of the best fighters and only lost like once or twice. I don't know if you've heard him say, but he knocked out George Groves in front of 80,000 people at Wembley. Was elite of the elite, world class fighter. Darren Till called him out. Now, the main reason for this is because Carl Froch has obviously retired now. He's like 40 something, still in good shape, and has started up a YouTube channel where he regularly talks bad about pretty much everyone. Darren Till must have been one of those people. Obviously, he didn't take to that slandering too well, and it's not calling out Carl Froch. Now, in my opinion, this is probably Carl Froch's way of like, you're not even on my level, like, you're not worth my time. Whenever he got called out, Carl Froch just got up and left the stadium. For someone who talks the amount he talks, and obviously he's walked the walk and proved that he deserves to be able to talk whatever he wants. But for someone that's talked that amount of stuff about people, to get called out by one of them and just walk away. You talk for that long about people, and then one of them's like, yeah, come fight me. And you're like, no, I'm just going to walk away and leave the arena. Thanks. Like, so awkward. Obviously, Carl Froch is a good fighter and would win probably against Darren Till. But just walking away is so strange. Get in there, have a moment. But yeah, I don't know. Weird one. If that's not next for Darren Till, I'm sure they'll find someone, bring someone in. He's looking really good right now, and he's Misfits' lead star right now because KSI is obviously injured and stuff like that. Swap Happy has suffered another defeat, so Darren Till is really up there as that main guy in Misfits. It's interesting to see what move they'll make next with him. Luke Rockhold, on the other hand, don't really know. He might stick around in boxing. He might finally retire, to be honest. And if he does, shout out to Luke Rockhold's spectacular career, multi-sport career, multi-world champion career, and shout out to him. Seems pretty sound as well. A legend of the game. Darren Till, we're all excited for the future. Who knows what happens next, honestly. It's kind of up in the air with Darren Till. I don't really see a Carl Froch fight happening. Don't think Carl Froch wants to smoke. Probably just wants to stay retired. Let me know down below in the comments what you think. The fights tonight left the winners in very interesting positions. You see with that Dylan Dennis, Tony Ferguson situation. What's next for Darren Till? Do we see Eddie Hall taking on Dylan Dennis? Stuff like that there. Do we see Anderson Gibb versus Tony Ferguson? There's a lot of fun fights to be made, so let me know what ones you want to see most down in the comments. Interesting time in the world of combat sports. Who would have thought that we'd have been sitting here in the year 2025 with Darren Till knocking out Luke Rockhold in boxing, Tony Ferguson getting his first win off an 8-fight losing streak, you know, and Dylan Dennis, by the way, first MMA win in 6 years. If you'd told someone that 10 years ago, they wouldn't believe you, but this is the reality we live in. Yeah, I do think personally that this stuff, Misfits boxing, MVP, Jake Paul, I think it grants the opportunity for some of the coolest moments we get in the sports nowadays, and a lot of it will be dead without it, you know. So shout out to KSI, Misfits, Moms Taylor, Jake Paul, shout out MVP, Nikisa. Roll on fight week though, because we have got we've got an important fight. Michael Conlon versus Jack Bateson, and I'll let you know my thoughts on that later on this week. So subscribe and come back for that there. We're also 2 weeks out from Lewis Crocker versus Paddy Donovan #2, and I'll be making my prediction video for that soon. So stay tuned. So like I say, more coming. Check out my Nick Diaz edit. It should be up soon. That's gonna be all for the day. Like, subscribe, follow. Check out my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.